Sorry, there's burnt plastic on the back of the fender?
Yeah, the back of the fender, you can see that the plastic's a little burnt from the motor pacing, from riders having just like, you just ride into the scooter a bit.
Oh, man. Welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. I'm Matthew Pioro, and joining me, as always, is Matt Hansen. Welcome, Matt.
What a pleasure.
Always. And joining us again, I feel like it's always a surprise, even though, what is this, 3-4 in a row? Jake Williams.
I'm on a heater.
Oh, again.
I know. Sorry to say, but I am back. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Well, welcome, everyone. In this episode, the feature interview is with Noah Ramsay, rocketing to fame just recently with the conclusion of Zwift Academy. Noah Ramsay won it, that talent ID contest that was broadcast on GCN YouTube recently. Noah Ramsay is a Toronto rider. He's a mountain biker, but he now has a pro road contract. I speak with Ramsay to find out how all of that came about, and I get really into his journey from the dirt to the roads of Europe. But before my feature interview with Noah Ramsay, guys, let's chat a bit about racing. There's been a bunch going on. We're in the midst of Paris-Nice and Tirreno-Adriatico. Those 2 week-long stage races are going on in France and Italy. But we also saw some great racing, one-day racing in Italy, Strade Bianche. Both the men's and women's races were concluded recently, and they were good. I enjoyed them. Matt, what did you think?
Yeah, it was great. I'm a big Demi Vollering fan, so to see her just wreck it up that last little climb in Siena, that was pretty amazing. And the funny thing about the finish is that, I mean, you could really screw up a great victory, I think, to myself. You know, I was saying to you, man, if I was ever in the lead, I could see me crashing on one of those corners coming to the finish. I mean, it's such a great little finish. And so many fans, you know. So, and of course, the men's race was something else.
I think I said to you, if you're crashing going uphill, which the finish into Siena is mostly uphill, if you're crashing uphill, that's not crashing, that's falling off your bike.
I mean, I always think of, I don't know if you guys remember when Wout van Aert basically came to a standstill and like rode his top tube, like walked, did that awkward thing that we've all done on a really steep climb in cross even.
That was his first time, I believe, racing Strade Bianche. And then he did figure it out, I'm pretty sure.
He did figure it out. And I wanted to say Tade's win, obviously, like, I would say an exclamation mark put on it with his tattered kit and torn shoulder. I think there's going to be kids showing up to the fast group ride with a chopped up jersey shoulder because I think it's going to be
the new ripped jeans kind of thing.
Yeah, the new fashion trend. I think it looked pretty cool.
That's what they should have done with the Alpecin kit. They should have made ripped kit, you know?
They really missed it, like all the fringed edges and things.
I did a story once about that the national team should have made a Canadian tuxedo, kind of like Carrera jeans for their national team kit. No one listened to my ideas, as always.
Okay, but returning to the racing, I just want to look at a few more things in the women's race. Anna van der Breggen, Demi Vollering's old teammate, she was pretty amazing in that race. The way she found some speed on that on a descent to get away from the group at about 12.5 kilometers to go, and then working together with Vollering, it was pretty impressive. Then, of course, Vollering let her rip with just about 400 meters to go to the finish.
Also, what was not great was to see Kasia, to see her body after the race. She got pretty torn up.
Yikes. Yeah. A lot of blood there.
And, you know, speaking of Pogacar's crash, it's pretty lucky for all of us and mostly him that crash could have been much worse, you know? There was a post there that would have been no bueno.
Yeah, I was watching that crash back, and he was legs up, splayed in the air, tumbling right into the cabbage. And it could have been nasty. And speaking of crashes, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot had a crash, but amazingly got up seemingly with one leg still clipped in and kept going.
That was amazing too. That was the best crash I've seen.
It's not that we're fans of crashes, but it's this is what AI does, right? We're helping AI make those crazy. What's a video of road cycling, and then you just see these carnage crashes.
Oh, those are so weird. And then everyone's hands don't look like hands, and it's like, what am I actually looking at?
Oh man. Okay, let's get this back on track. Back to the men's race. Matt, you had a bit of a take on the infamous, the much debated Tom Pidcock wait. This is following Tadej Pogacar's crash at about 50 kilometers to go. At first, it seemed like Tom Pidcock was going to continue on, but a couple kilometers later, he was looking back. What's your read of that, Matt?
Well, we were texting as we were riding the trainer, and I said he's going to wait. Like, there's no way he's going to go 50 kilometers by himself, and he's not going to wait because at a sportsmanship, sure, in a stage race, if the yellow jersey crashes, you're going to wait, right? That's just what you do. You're not going to take advantage of that. We've seen that lots of times before. But with 50K to go, you're not going to ride along looking over your shoulder at the world's greatest cyclist who's 10 seconds behind you. You're going to wait and work together. Like it makes no sense. So he might have said, oh, shoot, I shouldn't keep going, because he crashed. The story more is that he was just being smart. It was just smart racecraft. You're not going to ride 50K alone.
And I think it could have, if he did continue on and push, it had the chance to backfire, right? I mean, we saw how Tim Wellens ended up in third, which was an awesome ride from him. I could have seen that gone a different way, where all of a sudden Pidcock, who knows, was maybe off of the podium potentially, because once Pogacar went, I mean, that move was pretty decisive, and it was right away he had 10, 20 seconds, but Tom still had to ride that rest of that race himself, and he had that advantage from the two of them, I guess, working together. And that adrenaline after you crash, that hits different,
But he definitely was a little out of it. You could see, obviously, because you could see at first when he was pulling, he wasn't quite as dominant. But I have to say, the funniest thing for me is when Pidcock attacked, which is awesome, first of all, when he attacked as opposed to waiting for Poggi, which everyone does, right? And of course, you get annihilated.
This was the first attack at about 78 kilometers.
Yeah. What's funny to me is that when Pogacar responds, like, or even his final attack, like, you're sprinting to stay with him, basically. And he's just sitting there, just pushing his gear along. And it's just always makes me laugh how, like, him riding hard means that you have to sprint to stay in his wheel. And this is Pidcock. It's not just, some domestique. So, I mean, we saw it before, too, at the Worlds when Sivakov was working with Pogacar, and, he's sprinting just to do a little turn, right? And Pogacar just lumbering along. I mean, just what a talent.
Yeah, seated exactly the whole time. I watched the whole clip, and he was seated, I think, that whole, when he put 10 seconds on him. It's those tiny crank arms. I'm telling you.
That must be it. That must be
those
it.
Tiny little itty bitty crank arms. It's wild.
All right, from races that have wrapped up to races that are coming, I'm looking forward to Trofeo Alfredo Binda. That is one of the oldest women's races. It's a one-day race. And last year it was won by Elisa Balsamo. By the way, that race has been going on since 1974. This year, it seems to be getting longer and longer. Last year it was 140.5 kilometers, and this year it's gone up to 152 clicks. And that got me thinking, when we're talking distances and women's cycling, of another one-day race looking to become a classic in the women's peloton, and that's Milan-San Remo Donne, the women's Milan-San Remo. That will premiere this month, and the chatter there, of course, is at 156 kilometers. Is that proper for a Milan-San Remo for the women's peloton? Matt, what can you tell us about that distance?
Yeah, I mean, especially given that's, like you said, a relatively normal distance. I mean, the Alfredo Binda race is around the same, right? It's 152K. Flanders was, you're supposed to have a limit of 160K for women's racing, and Flanders went over a couple K. But I'm sure they could have made it 200 kilometers just in the spirit of the race itself. The question is, does it really matter, right? Because we've talked about this before too. Milan-San Remo basically comes down to two little climbs, yeah, at the end.
After 300 kilometers.
But we've heard from guys that have said that, of course, 300 kilometers, it's hard, but it's not hard like a Flanders, which is a lot shorter. Their legs don't feel quite as what do you call it? Tenderized. So I don't know, with an extra 40K, mean something. Maybe to the spirit of women's racing it would, but to the actual race it might not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was just going to say, I thought it was really interesting this with Strade Bianche, the way that they even timed the racing, where the team presentations all happened together, men's and women's, and they had them go on the same day. I thought that was kind of interesting from a fan standpoint. You're not showing up on a separate day to watch like it's all kind of packed into one day. I don't know if that's necessarily what's happening for MSR. And I don't know if necessarily that's good for women's cycling or bad, but in theory, you are capitalizing on all those people who are there regardless.
Yeah, and I think we all know that the following of women's cycling doesn't equal men's yet, but I think it's a great way to get people involved kind of by accident, because you've got maybe some of these, I don't know what you want to call them, more traditional fans who may not be following women's cycling that are there anyway. And they're like, oh, wow, this is great, kind of thing. It's a smart strategy.
Do you think it takes away from the women's racing by it not having its own day, for example?
I have spoken to a few women riders on that subject, and some of them do appreciate having it on the same day. And in this case, Milan-San Remo is on the same day. Both races are on the same day. It is an advantage to have, you've got the fans there, and they're going to watch all the racing. And so it elevates both sports. And of course, I get the argument for having it on separate days where it's like, this is the focus. You are here to watch the women's race. We're not padding it with a men's race. This is the main event.
But you just have to factor in some of these old school European fans, right? I mean, that's the thing. And it's just like I said.
Well, I don't know if it's that. It's also logistics.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, having it on one day is probably way less of a pain in the ass for the organizers.
Yeah, all the road closures. And like as a fan going there, I would love to see two separate, because we know road cycling fandom can be a bit sparse when you're standing there and everything goes by. Great. Be great to have it twice.
Exactly.
And also, these fans are sometimes going to be there hours before anyway to get their spot, right? Some of the hot spots. So yeah, I agree. Like you get to the two pelotons, two
big sellies, two big celebrations.
In the case of the women's Milan-San Remo, my thinking is, yes, it should be longer than 160. I think that is the spirit of the race. It doesn't have to be 300. I think it was Annemiek van Vleuten who was saying 200 would probably be the appropriate distance. I think if you're taking the name, look, if you're doing Paris-Roubaix, you got to have cobbles. If you're doing Milan-San Remo, yes, you have to have the Tre Capi and the Poggio and the Cipressa, which you do in both races. But it's the distance. And this is going back to what you were picking up, Matt. It's the distance that affects how things play out at the end. So I think what you want to do is have a race of a similar character. Anyway, that's my thoughts. And I'm happy to entertain the opposite end of that, where it's like, why we don't need to make carbon copies of the men's race. But I think we're not making a carbon copy. We're trying to, again, instill the spirit to make a similar type of race.
But like all these things, it's a work in progress, so to speak, with the growth of women's pro cycling. It's the same with the Grand Tours. You're not going to make a 3-week Tour de France Femme in the third edition, right? Also, as the peloton gets stronger, and I'm not talking about the leaders or the top 10. I'm talking about the bottom 100 kind of thing. The domestiques, they're all growing too. Like I said to you, PFP, I said she might have been shocked at the depth of women's cycling because it's been 10 years since she's raced. She was riding off the front. She was riding very aggressively and she wasn't getting away like she might have done 10 years ago. Well, that's because not only have the top riders gotten better, there's more of them. Well, that's what I mean. The top riders still top riders, but the domestiques and the teams are stronger as a whole. So that all has to grow to allow sort of the peloton as a whole to grow.
And can you call it Milan-San Remo if it starts in Genoa? I mean...
Well, Paris-Roubaix, change that too.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Oh, we're going to do this. Well, where does Milan-San Remo, the men's edition, start this year?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
It's Pavia. It's not. It's outside Milan. So neither Milan-San Remos are starting in Milan.
Pavia San Remo really has quite the ring to it, eh?
By the way, Jake, I'm going to blow your mind, but sometimes the Tour de France doesn't stay in France.
Oh my gosh. I knew that. They did it on Corsica one time. That was crazy.
All right, we're going to end the Milan-San Remo discussion. I just want to tell listeners about this one website that Matt brings you and I such joy. It's a website called Is Milan-San Remo Exciting Yet? It is just this very simple, beautiful website. Go to it and then check it throughout the race.
If it is one of our competitors, good for you. That's a brilliant idea, you know?
CCM should sell ads on that site, no?
No, the simplicity is what makes it beautiful. So anyway.
Yeah, check it out.
This episode of the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast is supported by MS Bike. For most of us, outdoor cycling season might still seem far away, but this is the best time to start planning right now for an event later on when the sun is out and the roads are clear. MS Bike has 11 big events this year, from Cowichan in BC to Windsor, Nova Scotia. Ontarians, I know what you were thinking, but no, not that Windsor, not the Windsor south of Detroit, but the Windsor that's 45 minutes northwest of Halifax. Whichever one you choose, you have plenty of time to check out our training and preparation advice for MS Bike events. You'll find a link for that in the show notes. Every MS Bike ride is a professional event. It's fully supported with fuel, roadside assistance, and first aid. These events are very welcoming. You only really need a bike, a helmet, and the desire to keep pedaling. This is all for an important cause. That is raising money to help those with MS. There are 90,000 Canadians affected by multiple sclerosis. You can help. Register now and start your fundraising journey at msbike.ca. Matt, Jake, before we get into my interview with Noah Ramsay, we're going to hear from Peter Glassford. Peter is a coach and longtime contributor to Canadian Cycling Magazine. He's also been on the pod with coaching advice, but it's been a long time, actually. Peter is going to give us some background on Noah, and Peter started working with Noah when Noah was only around 17 years old. So we're going to hear some insights on the rider who has then gone on to win Zwift Cycling Academy. So let's hear from Peter Glassford. Peter Glassford, coach and longtime contributor at Canadian Cycling Magazine and part of the podcasting duo behind The Consummate Athlete. Welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Always excited to be here.
I should add, Peter, that your partner in crime, in The Consummate Athlete, Molly Herford, she has written a profile on Noah Ramsay for the magazine that will be out in a few days. That's in print and in our online members area and on Apple News Plus. But Coach Peter Glassford, Coach Glasso, how old was Noah when you started working with him?
So Noah was 17 as we sort of went into that year of 2020. So end of 2019, the fall there, we started working together after Noah had sort of done a bunch of weekly races and impressed people. We sort of started in with some coaching and some training plans started into that winter.
And as a coach, what did you see as Noah's strengths?
You know, the first thing I do with young athletes when they come or their parents come, especially if they're younger, is I'll usually set them up with a training plan and it'll be customized to them. But I'll say, you know, go and do this and see how you like following a plan. And for a lot of the younger athletes, it is harder to interact with people, especially online, you know, through email or whatever, let alone in training peaks and that sort of thing. So I'll usually give that to them. And sometimes it's of use just having a bit of guidance on how much to train. But what I'm looking for is how much do they complete? How do they follow the plan? And then also how much do they interact with it? And I always give them the option to reach out for help or if they have questions via email. And so it's rare that you hear much, but in Noah's case, he did the plan really, really well and did ask some questions and we did keep in touch throughout that. And so that sort of was our first step to sort of working together more actively with coaching.
And what did you see in say the numbers that Noah was producing at a young age? Was there like watts off the charts? Or I know also you look at skills. What were you noticing in terms of his skills as, say, a bike handler?
I would say Noah at that age, his power was great, but it was also interesting because he hadn't done a lot of training. He was a hockey player, and so he had done some races against some weekly races and that sort of thing. But I think it was compelling because he was pretty good, but you could see that if he started training, it would likely get better. And in fact, that's what we saw. We didn't do anything wild. We were very consistent, I think, throughout the 5 years we worked together. But it just kept going up, which is the fun thing when that happens as well, right? Which I think is a lot of the capacity that Noah has in him is just, there's a lot there. So we were able to sort of gradually pull that out over the period we worked together.
Noah's main focus is mountain biking, but this past August, we saw him take a stunning win at the Tour de Via Italia in Windsor, Ontario. Now, you weren't surprised by that, were you?
Well, the power at that point, no, I think we knew that was within, the other testing numbers and some of the race numbers we had for him. It was certainly impressive, and certainly to get away from some of the folks in that group, the other athletes in that group. But no, I think everyone was they were impressive numbers. But no, I think we had seen stuff like that in training.
Now, I know you as a coach who likes to train for specificity. I know, well, part of what you look at is making sure you make a complete athlete. But then when it comes time to getting close to events, you really focus on this idea of specificity. Now, last year, Noah had some pretty big mountain bike races on his calendar. There was Mont Saint Anne, there was Lake Placid, those World Cups. But we see him at a road race in Windsor. What are you doing, Peter? That's not specificity, is it?
Sure. Yeah. And I think there is. I sort of have this weird dichotomy where we really like cross-training with consummate athlete. That's a big aspect of why people come to work with us, is that we don't vilify cross-training. So we enjoy the general training, strength training and running and all these different things that could come into a training program. But then indeed, the other side of my philosophy is more this environmental side, where we like to see the athlete, just like you would an animal. You'd rather see an animal out in the wild versus in the zoo, if you will, or some sort of isolated environment, or just throwing them into all sorts of different environments. So with an athlete, for sure, you would like a mountain bike racer to play the game a lot. That's something I always think about your podcast back with Kevin Field, talking about the game of cycling and all the sort of Moneyball aspects. And that's something for sure that we look at is that putting the athlete in the environment. Now, with the crit and that sort of thing, the durations aren't a ton different than mountain biking. So you could look at it from that perspective. But yeah, it's sort of this idea that a cyclist is a cyclist, and once they have skills and pretty good fitness, they can sort of bend it one way or the other. And I think we always need to remember, too, that an athlete like Noah, a high-level mountain bike racer, is going to do a ton of road miles. He'll be away in the winter. In the past years, he's been in Brevard, right, doing a ton of road miles and indeed getting into things like group rides or practice races or things like that as well. So it's not like he had never raced road or ridden a road bike and we just threw him on there and he just figured it out. He had spent a lot of time on a road bike.
Had you been discussing Zwift Academy tryouts with him at this point, let's say last August?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I would say, the interesting thing about Noah is that when he started with me was into that pandemic year where everyone Zwifted there for a while. And so a lot of Noah's training was indoors, as someone who lives in Toronto, in Canada, winter, and then pandemic. He did do a lot of Zwift racing. He's done things like our nationals for esports. So that isn't surprising to me. But this latest Zwift Academy thing was sort of a bit, Noah sort of thought it might be a way to find a team, to find something. He thought he knew he was great at it because he's had good success in Zwift racing and esports generally. So it wasn't necessarily part of the plan, but as Noah introduced that, we thought, okay, with Iceman coming, which was another great win and story for Noah in the fall, that it would actually be pretty good training. A lot of these efforts are pretty hard, and then also would help with something like Iceman, where it's a relatively shorter race. So it sort of fit into the plan, but I'll be honest that Noah sort of thought, okay, this is something that I need to go for, just with the timing of coming out of U23 and sort of looking for a team.
Once Noah made the finals and he was off in Spain filming for the Zwift Academy series that recently concluded on GCN and YouTube, were you in touch with him during that part of the process? Did you have a sense of how he was doing in the finals?
Yeah, Noah and I messaged a little bit throughout. It was pretty busy, and then with the time change, it's tough as well. But we touched base, and I heard different things about sprinting with Vanderpool and things like that. So it was very exciting, and it sounded like he was doing well. And I would say I was confident as he told me a bit about the other people there, and once he got there, and they were mostly riding outside, I was pretty confident that he was going to do well, just because of his mountain bike background and racing background. Not to take away from other people, but I just knew that he had really good power. But then as a mountain biker, if there was going to be, and indeed there was, any sort of skill and cornering and lead outs, that sort of thing, I think I was pretty confident that Noah was going to get it.
That's an interesting dichotomy to me, is that we have this online training platform, and I hear criticism about, people coming out of the pandemic, they got watts coming out of their ears, but their ability to handle a bike isn't as great. And yet we have this process of taking people out of this virtual training environment and then putting them on the road. And it seems Noah got the balance right, being able to do IRL stuff as well as the virtual stuff.
It's very odd, isn't it? And I would say I've probably written in Canadian Cycling Magazine about, against esports or against Zwifting. But I think Noah, again, from the beginning, has probably educated me about Zwifting and as this has become a thing. And I think we need to look at it as a way that youth, especially, and people who don't have access to trails or roads can safely start cycling and develop their cycling. And for some of the disciplines, it's certainly a very large indicative factor. So it's intriguing. It's a little different, but it's obviously working, because there's athletes who have gone before Noah now who are doing pretty good things and have continued their career past the 1 year. So it is pretty interesting.
All right, Peter, it's always great to have you on the pod. Thank you for your discussion, and it sets us up nicely with our conversation with Noah.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
That was my interview with Peter Glassford, and as you guys heard, Jake and Matt, as you heard, I teased Peter a bit about letting his mountain bike athlete take on a road criterium when that athlete should be focusing on mountain biking itself. I'm glad Peter looked beyond my teasing and gave a great nuanced answer there. And that's what we'd expect from him. By the way, listeners, you can find coaching advice for riders like us, like you, like me, from Peter in the pages of Canadian Cycling Magazine. The April-May issue is out right about now. And please support all Canadian cycling media. This is all Canadian-made cycling media. And you can get a print subscription or an online subscription through our site. And Apple News Plus is also a good option, so check it out. Now, on to Noah Ramsay. When I spoke with him, he was in Calpe, Spain, just riding, chilling, getting ready for the season ahead. Now, as I mentioned before, Noah is a Toronto rider. Jake, you've encountered Noah a few times, I think.
Yes, we've crossed paths. Noah is definitely an exuberant young man, in my experience, when he came in second place at Christie Cross. I swear I'll only mention that race once. Last year in Toronto, he walked around all day wearing a cowboy hat. He was chatting everyone up, very friendly. I believe he even had to cut his shift at Bateman Bicycle Co. short the day before to get in a pre-ride. So he was working at the shop who, up until I guess now, sponsored him. And always a ton of fun. Definitely someone you'd want to run into at a party, we'll say.
And we did run into him after, and I will mention it just once, the Christie Cross race. I'm surprised you didn't mention it the last episode, but you're making up for lost time. You organize one cyclocross race and you dine out on it, don't you?
I know. You'd think I did something important. But no, I mean, it's really awesome to see him come to this point where he potentially is looking at a road career. And I like how Peter did kind of poo-poo the fact that, hey, a crit, basically a mountain bike race in terms of effort. I mean, yeah, there's less turns, fewer turns, but really it's about the numbers and the repeatable efforts. And that crit, yeah, I remember, what was it, 490 watts for some god-awful time?
For 90 minutes, yes.
I think it was a little less, but it was like just under 400. I mean, which is still pretty impressive. And he averaged 47K an hour. And you have to think about the fact that there are 4 corners too, right? Which means you're going to, and also with watts, every corner, you're going to lose, you're going to coast, so you're going to lose a couple of watts. Yeah, sure, you'll get it back when you accelerate, but still, I mean, that's...
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys watched the Zwift Academy final episode, but that was a cold day. Like, they were doing those 4-minute efforts and those kids were bundled up. It was, it looked not so much fun.
By the way, how cool is it that there's 2 kids now in Toronto on the biggest teams, rivals, the young Ashlyn Berry, who will be on Visma, and then now we've got Noah on Alpecin. It's just...
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Not me.
I also want to mention that the Zwift Academy finals featured another Canadian. That was Annabelle Thomas from Calgary. She did quite well. She did quite well in the competition, but imagine that. Imagine double Canadian winners in the Zwift Academy.
But surely, I think the thing is, first of all, we saw that she's a motor, so I'm sure she won't have a problem getting on a team in the near future. I mean, she's on a club team now. She was on a Conti team before, but I think the other thing is, what a great way to, sure, you can break away in a race and get TV time, but this is way better than that, right? I mean, this is like the best exposure you can get, these date riders. So, hopefully something will come as a result of this, and also, I'm sure she's going to get some big results this year.
Like Matt said in his interview with Noah did specifically point out that, even as a loser of the Zwift Academy, like, this is huge for your own personal brand, Every kid has a YouTube channel, everyone's on the TikTok. There's lots of ways to get exposure for yourself.
Jake, you're anticipating a lot of the interview there because you've listened to it beforehand. But that's true that Noah did mention that this is a great thing for a person's brand, which is part of being an athlete nowadays. Your brand is part of your resume. The questions that I really wanted to pose to Noah was, what was it like watching these things back, watching the Zwift Academy unfold, as you know how it ends, and get his perspective on that. And the big question for me is, are you still a mountain biker? And his teammate there, or maybe not exactly, we can't say for sure that Matthew van der Poel is his teammate, because just a reminder to everyone, Noah is on the development team and Matthew van der Poel is on the top tier team. However, if that rider, Matthew van der Poel, is any example, it seems you can mix mountain and road. So the big question for me is, well, what does the future hold in terms of cycling disciplines for Noah Ramsay? All right, gentlemen, let's get to that interview with Noah Ramsay. Noah Ramsay, welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Noah, you are a mountain biker who has competed in World Cups. You were 11th at the Lake Placid World Cup cross-country race and 5th in the short track at Mont Saint Anne just this past year. You won Iceman Cometh in 2024. Yet last year we noticed you in road races, especially the Tour de Via Italia. That's a crit in Windsor, Ontario, that you won. And of course, recently you won a spot on the Alpecin-Deceuninck development team through the Zwift Academy process. Everyone just remember, Zwift Academy is a talent identification program that finds riders through the virtual riding platform. And these riders might be able to go on to the top levels of road racing. But Noah, it seems you're a mountain biker who's gone to the road. Now, I want to talk more about that possible drift, a little later. But first, let's go back a bit. You're from Toronto, and at what age did you start racing?
That's a little tricky to say, to be honest, because I've always done maybe one mountain bike race in the summer, just because it's been a part of my life through my father. But I would like to say I started racing provincially at the age of 15 or 16.
And you mentioned in the series, the 4-part series that aired on GCN about the Zwift Academy finals, that Toronto can be a bit tough to ride in. You mentioned biking through the city at least an hour to get away from stoplights. And I, as a fellow Torontonian, I feel your pain. I do that too. But where do you ride in the city? Do you ride the Dawn for your mountain biking, or do you go north of the city for mountain biking?
When I had to train specifically on my mountain bike, it would either be in the Don Valley, or if I had time, I would drive to places either like Uxbridge, so Durham Forest, or Hardwood Hills and Barrie.
And of course, you also mixed up the mountain biking with Zwift. And as we heard from your coach, Peter Glassford, you relied on Zwift a bunch during the pandemic. And of course, road rides to mix up your training. When did you seriously consider trying out for the Zwift Academy? When did that idea pop into your head?
It was honestly just August 2024. One of my close friends, Malcolm Barton from Uxbridge, who's also a racer, just told me, like, hey man, you're really strong and you could probably win this. So you should try out. And I was like, we'll see. We'll see if I find a team. And by MSA, I had a couple leads, but they weren't for sure. So I took a few days off after the last race of the season and just told my coach, Peter, that I wanted to do this for the potential opportunity.
So that's a pretty compressed timeline. So you're thinking about it in August. Mont Saint Anne was, I get it mixed up with Lake Placid. That was at the beginning of October.
Yeah, first week.
Yeah, and so then the Zwift Academy tryout process started not long after that. Or had it already started even?
So this year, the Zwift Academy time window was from middle of August till the first week of November, which gave me about 3 weeks to complete 6 workouts and 2 races. Once they told me that I could do a makeup race, they had makeup weeks because I missed the first race week, which was great for me. But yeah, it was quite a time crunch.
Now, what were the workouts like? And did you have to achieve a certain performance level within each workout?
5 out of the 6 of them were just power tests of different lengths or testing your repeatability, where you have free ride segments and you just go as hard as you can and you just see where you end up. So there's no actual power that you need to achieve. You ride on erg mode and then you're just racing against yourself. So the biggest thing is that it's just a mental battle.
Now, I just want to briefly go back to something you said earlier about when you were breaking down this timeline. You're looking for a team. During this past season, and you say this in the series that aired on GCN, you raced for a club team in Toronto, that's Bateman's, but you were trying to land on a more established team. Were you looking at mountain bike teams, or were you looking at both road and mountain bike?
Both. Yeah, Bateman's supported me greatly throughout I think I was on their program for 4 years, potentially 5. It's great. The support was great, but I'm getting to the age that I need to make a living doing this. So I was looking for an upgrade.
When did you find out you would be in the finals for Zwift Academy?
I found out in the second week of November.
And then when did you arrive in Spain to join the Alpecin-Deceuninck team camp and do all the filming for those Zwift Academy episodes?
I believe I arrived December 7th, so just at the end of the first week.
Did this all feel really quick to you? Was this moving really quickly? Or, I don't know, how was this pace?
Yeah. Doing the workouts was honestly quite difficult because just doing max out workouts every 2 days. And if I failed one, like the motivation wasn't there, I would just have to go and do it the next day. Like I might go hang out with my friends and because I was back in Toronto, but then I'd have to go do it the next day. And then once I found out, it was like, I took a week off the bike because I wasn't sure and had to get my fitness back to a good level that I'd be happy competing with. And did develop a knee injury in the first week, so it was quite stressful, to be completely honest with you.
Hey, producer Adam here. If you're enjoying this interview with Noah Ramsay, why not check out our podcast featuring Matthias Guimet? Like Ramsay, Matthias Guimet is changing his cycling discipline this year. Guimet is going from the track to the road with the Tutor Pro Cycling development team. So he's going to the road, Ramsay's going to the road. What a trend. Look for a link to the Guimet interview in the show notes.
In the first episode of the Zwift Academy series, which came out on February 15th, well after that camp in December, you and 3 other male riders did some intervals so the team could take some blood samples to check your biological markers. In the final interval, you're pretty closely matched with Mattia Gafuri, but your speed and watts per kilogram were slightly higher. Then it was a skills test, but in that skills test that came in the next episode, you crashed in the pre-ride, and this was on a go-kart track. How did you feel in that moment?
A little shaken up, a little rattled, but it was relatively slow speed, and I already felt like I was going faster than the other contestants. I had realized what I'd done. I just took a bad line, or a bit too sharp of a line, a little too fast on the wet track. In mountain biking, you crash in pre-ride from time to time, and you just realize the mistake you've made. As long as you're not too hurt, you just move on and try not to do it. So that's just the mindset that I had.
I think that mindset serves you well, because coming out of that test or that challenge that you guys faced, you were the top performer in that. Yeah. In that. So I guess this is an instance, like you said, of your mountain bike training coming into play. In that first episode, you said that there was no need to play mind games amongst the finalists. The challenges would simply decide the outcome. But what were the dynamics like between you and the other finalists?
For almost every day, it was still friendly. Like, it wasn't, oh, you beat me today, but I'm like your best friend. But there was no need to be rude to each other, just because like we're living with each other. We each had a roommate, so might as well enjoy your time here, because even if you don't win, it's still a great opportunity, great visibility for yourself as a brand. So yeah, I think we just enjoyed our time, and then when it was time to compete, we competed.
Who was your roommate?
My roommate was Elliot.
Yes, Elliot, the Scottish footballer.
That's right.
And you guys got along?
Yeah, I thought so. Still talk to him from time to time.
Great. One of the people I want to ask you about is Christoph Roodhooft. Is he as warm and cuddly in real life as he seems in video? And for those of you who don't know or remember Roodhooft, he's you see him on Netflix's Tour de France Unchained. He is the head director sportif at Alpecin-Deceuninck. His demeanor, and maybe you need to be a bit more diplomatic, Noah, but to me, his demeanor is just a few notches below villain in a James Bond movie. I really want to hear a rider say, "Do you expect me to complete those intervals?" And then I want him to say, "No, I expect you to die." But how is he in real life?
I would say I'm quite similar in the way that if I don't know somebody, or this is just a new group of people, I won't say much. Like, you'll need to give me a few days to warm up to you. I would just say he's Belgian.
Oh, that's great.
It's a good way to put it.
In the challenges for the Zwift Academy final, members of Alpecin-Deceuninck, the pro team, like Mathieu van der Poel, Jasper Philipsen, and Gianni Vermeersch were involved. You had to follow Vermeersch around the go-kart track.
Yeah.
And you and other finalists organized a sprint train against Rizebek, MVDP, and Philipsen. I'm wondering, how much interaction did you have with the World Tour pros outside of those events themselves?
Yeah, we had a fair amount. We ate all the meals with them. So our daily plan meshed with theirs. So whenever we had breakfast, lunch, dinner, all those snacks in between, they were eating at the same time as us. So it was basically like we were a part of their training camp with them, just did our own challenges from time to time.
So did you participate in any of their activities that maybe weren't part of what we saw in the series?
Not really. The weather that week was quite poor in Spain, which was a bit of an anomaly. So we did our own thing for most of the rides.
Back to Roodhooft for a second. There's a clip of him saying something to you during that sprint competition against the pros. Do you remember what he was telling you or what advice was coming over?
Yeah, he was telling me to get close to the scooter because at times I was letting the wheel drop a bit. I thought they were maybe going on the throttle a little, and just you're a cyclist, so you can't really match the scooter immediately. But all of us weren't really following, but he was telling me that I can scrape the bumper and it's fine. Which, yeah, there's like burnt plastic from the tires, so he's completely correct. And I've tried to follow his orders quickly.
Sorry, there's burnt plastic on the back of the fender?
Yeah, the back of the fender, you can see that the plastic's a little burnt from the motor pacing, from riders having just like, you just ride into the scooter a bit.
Oh, man. Do you foresee yourself getting to that level soon?
Yeah, we had team camp and we did one day of motor pacing, and I think I touched it a couple times and I'm getting more comfortable with it. I think it's good. It teaches you to be more comfortable in the peloton and getting close to people. So like, even though you might overlap wheels or hit somebody's tire, it's not the end of the world. Don't freak out. Just stay calm.
What did you learn from sprinting against pros like Mathieu van der Poel and Jasper Philipsen?
That I'm lacking watts.
That's simple?
Pretty much. Well, like the lead out train is much more organized. They know like what to do, when to move, and all that, just based on the time left till the finish line, which we didn't. I don't know if the other contestants had ever done a lead out train, but I definitely hadn't. But yeah, we also weighed, most of us, 5 to 10 kilos less than each of their riders. So there were watts missing there.
Throughout the whole process of the finals, did you experience ups and downs? Because to me, you always seemed like one of the strongest riders, but did doubts ever creep in?
Yeah, there were definitely doubts, but there's always doubts. There's always the potential that maybe you don't have it, but I'm not gonna just shut down completely at the idea that, oh, somebody might be better. I'm more so curious that I can maybe do it. So we're going to go see if I can.
That sounds like the right attitude. What was the date of your Zwift Academy win?
It was either December 13th or 14th. I can't quite remember.
And what's it been like keeping things quiet and not being able to tell anyone that you, in fact, won this competition until the final episode, which just aired?
It's been interesting. I've kept my mouth shut quite well, but obviously the word spreads pretty quickly. Just either industry people that hear the news from somebody, or I've been riding around on my Zwift Academy bike for the past month and a half. So that too, people have training camps, or I have friends with training camps, and they just see me on a canyon when I've never been riding a canyon before. And in my Alpecin helmet, not Alpecin kit, but the helmet. So maybe I've stopped at a coffee shop and people like stare and then they put the dots together, but I don't say anything.
Well, you watched the series unfold for the first time. You didn't see cuts of these videos beforehand. So as they aired, you're seeing them for the first time like the rest of us. You know how it ends, but what was it like watching it back?
Honestly, it's interesting. Like you know the result and you know how every day goes, but for some reason it's still cool because it's through somebody else's eyes. So there's a couple like little details that are maybe different than how I perceive them throughout the days. It's still like, I still enjoyed watching the show.
And what was it like hearing from friends and fans as the series went on? Because I know, people are watching it and rooting for you. They don't know how it ends. But how was that element of it?
It's cool as well. Like people saying good luck and like hope the next episodes go well. And it's like, oh, I hope so too. We'll see what happens, even though it had been filmed 4 months before.
Right. I guess you have to have a good poker face. Yep. We'll see how it goes.
Like, yeah. is honestly quite a weird situation.
We're speaking in early March. You're in Spain. What are your days like?
Pretty much just wake up between 7:30 and 8:30 every morning and eat breakfast, go ride my bike, have lunch, and then either some days I'll go to the gym, some days I'll just go sit on the beach. I mean, I'll probably move to another place like Girona so I can actually be with more friends and have more of a social life. But right now, I've been sick quite a bit, so I haven't even interacted with many people because I'm just trying to get healthy and have consistent training to get my speed back for the race season.
Now, what are some road skills that you feel you might still need to work on?
I don't know that there's many yet. It's just the game. Like mountain biking, I know how to position myself for certain things. And I do as well in North America. I've just been told that Europe's completely different, which I can imagine with racing in some of the narrow streets, that you have to be aggressive to get yourself into position so that I don't have to be surging at the back of the pack, for example. We'll see if I can figure it out quickly, or I expect to make mistakes, but we'll see if I can learn from them.
Are you still a mountain biker?
I don't know. Not next year, but the Olympics are coming up in the next few years, so hopefully Alpecin can help me develop the engine to get to the point that it needs to be so I can be one of the top competitors in Canada to fight for that spot for the 2028 Olympics. But we'll see. We'll see in a couple of years if I'm a mountain biker again, but we'll see. I'm a road racer from now on.
And what's ahead for you this season in terms of racing? Or have you had a chance to talk race calendar?
All I know is up till May 18th, I start my season off March 25th at the Olympias Tour in the Netherlands. Then I think it's April 4th, Pays de la Loire in France, another stage race. And then Tour of Turkey at the end of April. So I do a 2.2, a 2.1, then a 2.pro. And then I'll do a 1 day in New York. And then I guess I'll chat with the team about how the summer will look, and potentially, I guess, late summer, see what needs work and where the team can use me best.
And what are your hopes for the season ahead?
Honestly, just to learn, get some more years on my contract. So I'd like to learn, get faster. I don't think there's a massive stress on just like on making a huge impact immediately. Naturally, that's always what I want to do, but I have to be realistic that my buildup has been a bit less than has been worse than everybody else who's been doing base season since November. And I peaked again for mid-December and then took another off season. So yeah, I'm just going to go with the flow, make some mistakes and hopefully learn from them and just be a better racer.
Well, Noah, thank you very much for your time and this discussion. It's super fascinating and your journey is unique. So I'm happy you could share that with us. And good luck. Good luck in the season ahead this year.
Thank you.
And that's the episode. It is written and edited by me, Matthew Pioro. I had help from Matt Hansen. Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
The enthusiasm you bring is always stunning.
Oh, you're welcome.
And Jake Williams, thank you for joining us on this episode.
Anytime. It's a pleasure.
This episode of the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast is produced by Adam Killick. He does the music too. Also, thanks to Ontario Creates for its support. Is it time to ride outside now? Can I ride outside now? How about now? Now?
Oh,
Now?
I'm riding to work in a bit, and in Toronto today, I believe it's a high of 12.
Oh, yes. Well, I don't mean my commutes, which don't stop. I mean fancy bike riding, and my fancy bike is still on the trainer, and my skis are still at the ready. So I'm still making the switch.
Are you one of these guys? Do you Strava your commutes? Are you like a local legend on the bike path?
Have you ever seen my commutes on Strava?
I can't, honestly, I don't know. Now I'm wondering.
You will not see my commutes on Strava.
You're not exerting that hard on your commutes.
I Strava my walks.
Oh, honestly, that's soothing. Can you be a local legend walker?
I am, so I guess that's the answer.
There you go. Mic drop.
A hell of a walker. Oh, I meant literally, not Strava.
All right, everybody, keep your rides exciting, or at least interesting, and ride safely. And thanks for listening, and we'll talk to y'all later.